Hi, this is Lydia with TeachYourKidsGuitar.com. Today, I'm going to show you how to practice scales with the Teach Your Kids Guitar method. Practicing scales is one of the best ways to improve at guitar, and with our learning method, scales can be fun, even for kids. In this video, I'll show you how we've put a unique spin on scales so they become a regular part of your child's practice routine. I'll also show you how to use our scale sheets, which are included with each of the song packs you'll find at our website. So, what is a scale? The simple answer is that it's a group of notes used in a song which often belong together in the same musical key. In other words, if a song is in the key of C, it will use notes from the C major scale in its melody and its chords. Since songs are made up entirely of notes from scales, it should be no surprise why practicing them is so important. Unfortunately, scales are often overlooked by students, and this is especially true for kids. Usually, kids who are learning guitar only want to play songs, ignoring scales altogether. They think scales are boring and are unable to see how they relate to the music they're learning. However, our method solves this problem with a special approach. Each song's scale sheets presents you only with the fragment or part of the scale used in the song you're learning. In other words, you will be practicing the real scale, but it will be limited only to the range of notes used in that particular song. Let's take a look at how this approach works and why it's so effective. For the following examples, I'll use the scale sheet for the song Pop Goes the Weasel. Before we begin, let me emphasize that you'll need to know how to read guitar tablature to use the scale sheets. If you haven't yet learned this easy notation system, you can watch our video on learning guitar tablature. Turning our attention to the scale sheet, we can see that the scale fragment starts on an E note and ends on an A note. This tells us that the lowest note used in Pop Goes the Weasel is this lower E note. And the highest note of the song is this higher A note. However, just because this scale fragment starts on an E note and ends on an A note doesn't necessarily mean that it's in either of those keys. In fact, Pop Goes the Weasel is actually in the key of C. This is easy to see because we've circled the C note in red and labeled it as the root note. The root note is the most important note in a scale, and it's the note that the whole scale is based upon. So, as you are using our special approach to practicing scales, you will see that although you're still practicing a full C major scale, your practice is limited only to the notes used in Pop Goes the Weasel. Instead of having to worry about every possible note in a C major scale, you can focus exclusively on the notes used in the song you're learning. With Pop Goes the Weasel, the scale fragment is a pretty big size. However, with some other songs, it can be much shorter, sometimes as few as 5 notes. Soon, you'll see why different size scale fragments can provide unique practice opportunities for each new song you learn. But first, let's talk about how to play scale fragments using the correct fingering technique. To make things both easy and consistent, every song in our method resides, whenever possible, on the first 4 frets of the guitar. Therefore, you'll always use an index finger on the 1st fret, a middle finger on the 2nd fret, a ring finger on the 3rd fret, and a pinky finger on the 4th fret. This will be easier if you picture a 4-fret box. 1st fret, use the 1st finger. 2nd fret, use 2nd finger. 3rd fret, use 3rd finger. 4th fret, use 4th finger. In rare instances, however, a scale in a song may have one specific note that is not in this 4-fret box. This note will be located on the 5th fret of the thinnest guitar string, and we'll see this happen in Pop Goes the Weasel. The best way to handle this note is simply to use your pinky finger to play it. Again, to play these notes, you should put the correct finger right behind the fret bar and press down. At the same time, while holding a guitar pick between your thumb and index finger, pluck the string of the note you're pressing down. Make sure to pluck the string with a downward motion. So you can see what this looks like. I'll play the scale fragment with the correct fingering. Now, let's look at page 2 of the scale sheet, which contains the practice patterns used for these exercises. Practice patterns provide effective ways to practice the scale, and there are 3 unique categories: contour, intervals, and arpeggios. We'll start by looking at contour with practice patterns 1A and 1B. Contour applies to the physical shape of a musical idea. Notice that practice pattern 1A starts on the root note of the scale fragment, travels up to the top, and then comes back down to end on the root again. It has a nice smooth flowing motion, just as melodies found in songs often do. Practice pattern 1B is similar, but it moves in the opposite direction. Now I'll demonstrate practice pattern 1A with the new student goal, where all I will need to do is concentrate on the correct fingering as I play the notes. When you try this yourself, you can look at your hands as often as needed to check on your finger placement. And now, let's look at practice pattern 1B again, approaching it as a new student. Watch how I play this practice pattern, looking at my hands as often as I need to. Now let's return to practice pattern 1A, but this time with the experienced student focus. Remember, you should only move to this next level after you've become comfortable with the new student focus. It may take weeks or even months until you're ready for this next level, but that's perfectly okay. Since I'm playing this pattern at the experienced student level, I must use the correct fingering again, but this time looking only at the scale sheet and not at my hands. This can take some practice, but it's valuable training for preparing to play songs when reading the music at the same time. Here's where a music stand really comes in handy. When learning to play by feel, the most common problem you may have is that your hand slips up away from the first 4 frets, with the fretting hand moving up the neck and winding up in the wrong position. Let's see what this common mistake looks like with practice pattern 1B at the experienced student focus. As you can see, that didn't sound very good. When playing these patterns, be sure to concentrate on keeping your hand in the correct 4-fret box position we described earlier. If you can stay in this position the whole time, learning to play by feel will be easy. Let's try it again with practice pattern 1B, this time concentrating on staying in position. Let's turn our attention to the second practice patterns category, known as intervals. An interval refers to the distance in pitch between any two notes. In this category, I'll be jumping back and forth between the root note of the scale and the other notes of the scale, while creating wider and wider intervals. This is great for practicing picking notes while skipping strings. Now, let's try practice pattern 2B, which has the intervals moving in a different direction. The third category of practice patterns are arpeggios. An arpeggio consists of the notes that make up a chord, but are played just one note at a time. In this case, we are playing the arpeggio notes of a C major scale, which are also the same notes used in a C major chord. Now that we've seen how the practice patterns work, let's talk more about teaching them. If you're teaching your kids, you can assign the scale sheet for each new song as part of their homework. The best time to practice with the scale sheet is at the very beginning of each practice session, before working on song material. This is a good way to get warmed up and to make practicing scales a continuous part of learning guitar. The scale sheet is also a good way to begin each lesson when you're using Teach Your Kids guitar materials. Teachers usually start a lesson by reviewing material a student has been assigned, and scale sheets are something that can be assigned every week. Have your students start each lesson by playing through the scale sheet that has been previously assigned, making sure that your learner is doing everything correctly for his or her appropriate skill level. Well, that'll do it for this video on practicing scales with the Teach Your Kids guitar method. You'll find the exercises on the scale sheet to be extremely effective, and the skills you develop will translate to every song you learn. We've covered several important concepts in this video, so feel free to revisit it again. Also, go to teachyourkidsguitar.com for more lesson videos and information about our one-of-a-kind learning system. Thanks for watching.